I didn't even have time to process how quickly things were spiraling. His hand brushed against mine as I passed him the pasta bowl, and it was like an electric jolt shot through my body. Everything about the evening was painfully ordinary. Just dinner after work at his place, nothing promising or unusual. I told myself I was just there to unwind, but his hand lingered. Not in a pushy way, not intentional, just a second longer than it needed to. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel something strange in that moment. I didn't even look him in the eye. Too scared I'd see my own confusion reflected back. I'm not 16 anymore. I shouldn't be shaken by a touch. And yet, I sat down at the table and felt my shoulders tense. He laughed, chatted about his weekend, and I nodded along, while inside my thoughts were spiraling. This wasn't supposed to be significant, but it felt too real. I still lived in the same relationship, in the same apartment, with the same man. Stability, as always, was present, but so was the silence. There hadn't been touches like that in a long time, ones that left me breathless. Everything had become a routine. Good morning, how was your day? Let's sleep. Not bad, just dull. But here was something raw, something unpredictable. He accidentally bumped my knee while reaching for the sauce in the fridge, and again, my body flinched. It was ridiculous, even irritating. I was mad at myself. Nothing had happened. We weren't flirting. No lines were crossed. We were just eating pasta. And yet, I couldn't stop thinking about how my skin seemed to remember every brush. I caught myself wondering, how long had it been since someone made me feel anything at all? I watched him clearing the plates, and I couldn't tell. Was this just an ordinary evening? Or had something inside me already started to shift? Maybe nothing would happen. Or maybe I'm just afraid to admit I'm already one step beyond understanding it. I tried to go back to normal. Wake up, make coffee, answer work emails, talk to my partner about groceries and weekend plans. But everything felt muffled, like someone had turned the volume down on my life. That dinner wasn't supposed to mean anything. That touch, just a meaningless accident. But I kept replaying it in my head, not just the physical sensation, but the way it made me feel. Alive, seen. And that scared me more than anything. At home, everything was in place. Clean counters, folded laundry, predictable silence. The kind of silence that doesn't scream, doesn't hurt, just hums in the background until you stop noticing it. He sat on the couch like he always did, and I sat beside him, scrolling, nodding, pretending. But I wasn't really there. I didn't plan to see the other man again. I didn't text him, didn't stalk his social media, but I didn't block anything either. I left the door slightly open, emotionally, mentally, maybe even physically. I told myself it was harmless, that I wasn't doing anything wrong. But my body betrayed me. When a notification popped up with his name, my stomach tightened. Just a message about a book we'd talked about. Innocent. Still, I stared at it longer than I should have. I reread it. I wondered what he was doing, who he was with. I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror that night. Same face, same life. But something had shifted behind the eyes. I wasn't cheating. I hadn't lied. But I was leaning toward something I couldn't quite define. This wasn't love. It wasn't even a crush. It was the memory of how it used to feel to want something without guilt. And I think I missed that more than I realized. It was supposed to be a coincidence. That's what I told myself when I ran into him near the bookstore. We exchanged a quick smile, casual words, the kind of meaningless small talk that keeps things polite. But when he offered to help me carry a box of returns to my car, I didn't say no. I didn't even hesitate. The walk was short. Too short. My heart was racing the entire time, not because the box was heavy, but because I didn't know what would happen when we reached the parking lot. Or maybe I did. Maybe that's why I said yes in the first place. We stopped beside my car. I thanked him like it was just a nice favor. But we didn't move. I held the keys, but my hand didn't reach for the door. He stood close, not too close, but close enough that I could feel his breath in the cool air between us. And neither of us stepped back. My head was a mess. This wasn't me. I don't cheat. I don't cross lines. I'm the responsible one, the safe one, the one who thinks things through. But suddenly, I was the one leaning in. It wasn't long. The kiss lasted maybe 2 seconds. Software. Hesitant. But in that brief moment, something inside me cracked wide open. I pulled away immediately, eyes wide, heart pounding. He didn't follow. He didn't say a word. He just looked at me like he understood exactly what had just happened and what it meant. I got into the car and sat in silence for a long time, gripping the steering wheel like it could anchor me. My lips still tingled. My whole body buzzed. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just sat there, stunned by the fact that I had kissed someone who wasn't mine, someone I wasn't supposed to want. It wasn't love. It wasn't passion. It was a shift, a quiet rebellion, a reminder that I hadn't disappeared completely inside the safety of my own life. And now I couldn't unfeel it. When I walked into the apartment that evening, everything looked exactly the same. The hallway light was on. His shoes were by the door. The hum of the dishwasher filled the quiet. I placed my bag down gently, like I was afraid to wake something. He glanced up from the couch, gave a small nod, and returned to whatever he was watching. Nothing felt different to him. But to me, everything had shifted. I went through the motions, changed clothes, made tea, sat beside him. I laughed at the right moments, commented when needed, pretended I was fully present. But the space between us felt wider than ever, even though we were only inches apart. I kept thinking about the kiss, not replaying it like a fantasy, but trying to make sense of the weight it suddenly carried. It had been a moment, a breath, a decision that felt spontaneous but somehow deeply rooted. And now I was back here, in the life I had built, wondering if it still fit. He didn't notice anything. Maybe that's what hurt more than the guilt. Not the fact that I'd kissed someone else, but that the man I lived with couldn't sense a storm inside me. Or maybe he had long stopped looking. I told myself I wouldn't see the other man again, that this was a mistake I could bury. But the truth was, my body had remembered something that night. A feeling, a spark, a version of myself I hadn't felt in years. Lying in bed beside someone who felt like routine, I stared at the ceiling and wondered, was this guilt or grief? Was I mourning something I'd lost or something I'd never really had? I didn't have answers. Just a quiet knowing that something inside me had started moving. And I wasn't sure it would stop. I wasn't supposed to see him again. That's what I kept telling myself in the days that followed. One kiss doesn't mean anything if you let it go. But the universe, or maybe just the city, had other plans. It was a gallery opening. My friend had invited me last minute, practically dragging me there to get me out of my head. And for a while it worked. The buzz of conversation, the clink of wine glasses, the blur of color on canvas. It dulled the noise inside. Until I saw him. He stood on the other side of the room, talking to someone, unaware of me. But my body reacted before my mind caught up. My heart skipped. My stomach clenched. I turned away instantly, pretending to study a painting I didn't care about. My hands suddenly too awkward, too visible. For the next hour, I was on edge. Not from fear, but from anticipation. I could feel him nearby, like the air shifted every time he moved. He never approached, never looked my way. And that made it worse. I left earlier than planned. Told my friend I had a headache, smiled, waved, lied. In the car, I sat with my coat still on, headlights casting long shadows across the steering wheel. It hit me then. Not that I saw him again, but that I'd wanted to. That a part of me had hoped for it. And not only that, I'd liked the tension, the what-ifs, the invisible thread still tying us together. At home, my partner asked how the night was. I said it was fine. He nodded. End of conversation. No questions, no follow-up. Just another harmless evening. Nothing said, nothing noticed. But I knew the truth. Something inside me was no longer dormant, and I didn't know what to do with that. It started with coffee. Just coffee. Neutral ground. Public space. Nothing could happen. Nothing should happen. I even told myself I was doing the right thing by facing it head on. Closure. Clarity. That's what I called it. We met on a quiet afternoon, the kind where clouds hang low and the world feels suspended. I wore something plain, something that didn't invite attention. But my heart was louder than I wanted to admit. He was already sitting by the window when I arrived. He looked up and smiled. Not too much, not too little. Just enough to make me forget why I thought this was a good idea. We didn't talk about it. Not directly. Just work, life, surface-level stuff. The air between us was full of everything we didn't say, and that said more than any conversation could. When I stood to leave, he walked me to the door. Outside, the street was almost empty. Cars passed like background noise. I turned to thank him, again trying to keep it polite, controlled. But then I saw it in his face. That softness, that stillness. And without thinking, I stepped forward. The kiss wasn't hesitant this time. It was quiet, but certain. It didn't ask for permission or offer apology. It was simple and warm and terrifyingly real. I pulled away first. He didn't move, just stood there watching me. There were no promises, no dramatic declarations, just a shared moment that couldn't be dismissed anymore. I walked to my car slowly, like each step meant something. And maybe it did. I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't even guilty. I was just aware. Aware that what I had at home was a life built on habits, and what I felt now was something I hadn't known I missed. It wasn't about him. Not entirely. It was about me. About remembering that I could still want. Still feel. And now I couldn't go back to pretending otherwise. He asked if I wanted to watch a movie that night. Just like always. I nodded, smiled, said sure, and sat down beside him on the couch. The same couch we'd curled up on for years. The same blanket. The same silence filling the spaces where curiosity used to live. I stared at the screen, but I couldn't tell you what we were watching. My thoughts were somewhere else. Not with the other man. Strangely, not even with the kiss. They were with me. With the version of myself that used to want more, expect more, feel more. He reached for my hand halfway through the movie. I didn't pull away, but my fingers didn't respond. They just lay there, passive, like a gesture I'd practiced too many times to give it meaning anymore. That night, I pretended to fall asleep early. I faced the wall, curled up, and stayed still long after the lights went off. And in that stillness, it hit me. I had already left. My body was here, but I wasn't. I had drifted, quietly, without drama or announcement, just step by step, breath by breath, towards something that felt more honest. I wasn't texting the other man. We weren't sneaking around. There was no secret plan. But he had become a symbol of a crack in the glass I'd been staring through for years. He didn't make me leave. He just reminded me that I could. I started staying late at work, going to the gym more, walking home alone. And he didn't ask questions. Maybe he knew. Or maybe he just didn't want to know. And maybe I wanted him to notice, to fight, to say something that would wake me up. But all I got was silence, comfortable, familiar, and so loud it made me ache. Days passed without a message from him. Not a call, not even a, "How have you been?" And still, I kept checking my phone like a habit I couldn't break. I told myself I didn't care, that this was better, cleaner, less complicated. But the quiet lingered. He didn't reach out, and I didn't either. That should have been the end of it. But instead, it became a mirror I couldn't look away from. The stillness wasn't rejection, it was clarity. He had been a moment, a spark, a wake-up call. And I had answered it. At home, everything was routine again. We made dinner. We shared updates about our day. We even laughed once or twice. But underneath it all, I felt like a ghost inhabiting someone else's life. Smiling on cue, folding laundry like it meant something. He didn't notice the difference, or at least he didn't say anything. And maybe that was the final proof I needed. We were still moving in sync, but not together. Just parallel. Two lives brushing past each other under the same roof, not quite touching. I found an old notebook in my drawer that night, one I hadn't opened in years. I flipped through half-finished pages of dreams I'd once had, things I wanted to do, places I wanted to see. And somewhere between the lists and scribbles, I started writing again. I didn't write about him. Not either of them. I wrote about myself. What I missed, what I wanted, what I was afraid to say out loud. And when I finished, I wrote one sentence that didn't feel like fiction. I want to leave. Not in anger, not in drama, just a quiet truth. A sentence that had been waiting for me to catch up. And once I wrote it, I knew I would. The key clicked in the lock with a sound I'll never forget. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a small metallic confirmation that this space was mine. My hands were trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from something close to relief. The apartment was small, unfurnished except for a mattress on the floor, a kettle, and a folding chair. But it felt like oxygen. Like I could finally exhale after holding my breath for years. The move wasn't explosive. No yelling. No accusations. Just a conversation that was quieter than I expected. He looked confused. I stayed calm. I didn't blame him. I didn't justify anything. I just said I needed something different. He asked if there was someone else. I paused for a moment too long, then said no. And in a way, it was the truth. Because this wasn't about another man. This was about me finally choosing myself. That first night, I sat on the floor with a mug of tea and watched the streetlights paint long shadows across the wall. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just sat in the stillness and let it settle around me. My phone buzzed once. His name on the screen. I didn't open the message. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood. No one else could decide what this chapter meant. Not him. Not anyone. Just me. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone else's reaction to shape my next move. I wasn't sure what came next. Maybe nothing would. Maybe I'd just live here, quietly, piece by piece rebuilding the version of myself I lost in the routine. But as I curled up on the mattress, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, I felt it. Peace. Not fireworks. Not euphoria. Just the steady warmth of knowing I belonged to myself again. And that was enough.